Greetings YouTubers, AtariLeaf here with a video response discussion video. It's called, what did I call this thing? Broken Consoles, Broken Dreams, my video response to LactobasillusPrime's video response to my 2017-2018 annual collecting goals video. Whew! I don't know if that's the longest title ever on YouTube, but it's certainly the longest I've ever done. Okay, so what's this video about? Broken consoles? Who wants to talk about something like that? Well, it was something in Mark Verheer's, I think that's how I pronounce his last name, Mark, from the Netherlands. Mark, he did a video response, and one of the things he talked about was, one of his goals was actually to collect less hardware. Less consoles, less retro computers. And the reason is that he was going through this bit of a spell where he was getting a lot of broken consoles. Broken computers. I think he said he lost a ZX Spectrum that wasn't working, a Commodore 64, maybe a VIC-20, and that was the reason he was going to try and collect less for the actual machines. Because we are talking about machines that are 20, 30, sometimes 40 years old. Atari is now, the 2600 is on its 40th anniversary this year. And there are consoles even older than that. So the question is now, what do you do? I mean, this is a hobby that we're all in. We've all probably experienced this to some degree or another. And one of the reasons, I didn't touch on this in my last video, in my goals video, one of the reasons I did get rid of some of the things like the Coco is there is a fear of having these things, especially expensive consoles, expensive retro computers, and they could eventually break down. Now, you can repair certain aspects of a computer, if it's a capacitor, if it's a switch, something common that you can get a modern replacement. You can go on Mouser, for example, Mouser.com, and buy a lot of the parts that you would need. But if it's a custom chip, for example, in the Color Computer 3, the main chip is called the Gimme chip, G-I-M-E, and don't ask me what it stands for, I don't remember at the moment, but that was a custom chip made by Tandy. If that goes out on your Coco 3, you either have to take it from another Coco 3, or you have a dead machine. So either way, you take it out of another machine, you have another dead Coco 3. There are people, by the way, working on a replacement Gimme chip, a more modern substitute. Okay, now, let's see. I've got a list of things I wanted to talk about in this video. So yeah, as these machines get older, there's more likelihood of them breaking down. And I'm kind of wondering, you out there who's watching this video, my audience, what do you do when you have a broken console? Do you just put it aside? Do you have maybe a friend, a family member? Is there a local business that where you can get these things fixed? And what I've been doing lately in the last few months is I've been trying to get into the actual repair part of this hobby. Excuse me. Because I have had machines that broke down, and over the years I've had a Coco 1, I've had a ColecoVision that broke on me. I had a Commodore 64 with a bad SID chip, which is the sound chip, and I've just recently repaired a 2600. It was a 6-switcher, and in that case what happened was I turned on the machine, and I noticed in 2-player games it would fire automatically, the right joystick port. Whether there was a joystick plugged in or not, it would automatically fire. And after doing some research online on Atari Age, I replaced a chip. That didn't solve the problem, and someone mentioned it could be a capacitor that's attached to the trigger line of that joystick port. And they said, you know, desolder one of the legs of the capacitor, lift it out so it's not making contact, and try it again. Sure enough, it went back to normal behavior. So it was a bad capacitor. I replaced the capacitor, and it was good again. And I just did a video a month or so ago where I replaced a couple of switches on an Atari XEGS. So yeah, I've had to invest in, I'm just kind of watching my notes here, I've had to invest in some tools, which you have to do if you want to repair these machines. And I'll just show you a few of them here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to a YouTuber many of you may know. He's not as active anymore. Thomas3120. He's got 2 great videos about soldering, about the tools that you need, about basic techniques. So I'll link those 2 if you want to take a look at them. But some of the basic equipment that you're going to need before you can do any kind of work at all, you're going to need something like this here, a multimeter. They're not that expensive. This one I think cost me $10 at a Canadian Tire. But you can check the voltages. You can check continuity and other things with this. Diagnosis, by the way, for me is the hardest part, because sure, you can solder and unsolder and put in new parts and so forth, but if you don't know what needs to be fixed, because when you look at a circuit board, to me it's a confusing mess. I don't have an electronics background, so I'm new to this as a hobbyist. So using this to help diagnose does help a bit, but you're still going to need to learn a lot, and I've got a lot to learn myself. And then after that, once you do diagnose, you're going to have to repair. So you're going to need something, and I bought one of these a few months back. This is a Heiko soldering station, and this one was recommended to me. I had a few of the really cheap soldering irons, and 2 of them burnt out in the same day I used them. Even at full heat, it couldn't even burn through a piece of paper. So they're junk. So if you buy a cheap, $10, $15, $20 iron, be aware that you might not get far with it. Might not get a lot out of it. So it's better to go with something like this. It's a digitally temperature-controlled soldering station. The Heiko brand is one of the best out there, so I recommend this. And of course, you're going to need things like actual solder. Okay? And this is, I don't have everything, by the way. A desoldering pump. Now, if you really want to spend the money, you can get a desoldering station or a desoldering gun, but they're pretty expensive. So unless you're doing a lot of it, or for a business, you can get one of these pumps. You could also use, I don't like this as much, desoldering braid. I don't know if you can see that. But you put the iron on that and it kind of wicks up or soaks up the solder onto this. And I need to get something called liquid flux, which will help with the desoldering. And then other little things like your little wire snips. Cool, huh? And these things are nice too. Helping hands. Little magnifying glass. You can hold pieces. Good for holding wires together if you need to. Plus, you can play like he's a little magnifying glass action figure man. Right? Which, why not? And then I've picked up a few parts that I've needed over the last few months. This here, you're not going to see this well. These are just the little capacitors. That's what I replaced in that 2600. A couple of things in here. I'll mention Console 5 as a website. What I've got in here, I've used a couple of pieces of it. It's an Atari 2600 refresh kit. So it's a lot of your most common capacitors that go. I think there's a power jack in here, some other doodads and doohickeys and whatnot. So those are good. You can get refresh kits for a lot of different systems from Console 5. Check them out. These are chips for a 4050s, I think these are called. That was the chip I replaced in the 2600 for that trigger line, which turned out not to be it. So anyway, those are a few of the pieces that you will need for repairing. And like I said, if you really want to be in this hobby and you've got these old machines, chances are you're going to need to get something repaired. I mean, I go on Atari Age all the time, and when I'm going through some of the threads on there, inevitably, once, twice, 3 times a week, my Atari 800 XL has a black screen, my 7800 won't boot up, my Atari 2600 is giving me a really bad picture. Something is going on with these machines. And of course, if you're into some of the newer ones, like PlayStation 2 or Dreamcast, you're talking about machines now that have a lot more working parts. They have CD or DVD trays. They can be a lot more complicated. But what I'd like to ask you in this discussion video is, how do you handle it? Do you fix these yourself? What are some of the tools? What are the techniques you use? Or do you have a friend, a family member, or a local business that helps you fix these? Or do you just throw them away, put them in the closet, and hope for a better result down the road? But yeah, as these consoles get older, they are going to need repair. And hopefully that's something we can all do, because nobody wants to see these machines in a landfill. We want to be able to use them, to be able to enjoy them for as long as we possibly can. So let me know what you think. This is AtariLeaf. Thank you for watching, everybody, and have a great day.